Deep woods hikers and campers. What is the strangest or scariest situation you have come across? Backpacking with 15-year-old daughter. 6 miles in we had climbed over a plateau and down into a canyon. We were filling up water bottles when she slipped on a wet rock and obliterated her ankle. No cell phone signal. No means to contact the outside world. As I watched her ankle swell, all I could think about was how stupid I was to get my kid into the situation. I quickly gained my wits, stopped panicking, made camp, and distributed anti-inflammatories. The next morning I made a makeshift splint and decided we would be better off following the creek out because climbing out of the canyon did not seem like a feasible option. It was in the upper 30s and we had to cross waist-deep water multiple times. Took a whole day to get out, but we made it. Daughter was a trooper every step of the way. It turned out to be more of a bonding and learning experience than I ever could have imagined, and now we have a great story. Ankle was badly sprained, but she recovered after about 6 or 7 weeks. I was camping up in Heber, Arizona with my brothers and my dad. I was 15 or so at the time and we were deep in the woods, far from most other camps. Me and my brothers had our own tent whilst my dad had a separate one not far off. He likes to give us our privacy while we were camping. We would usually run around a bit at night before going to bed, entering our camp to sleep at about 11 p.m. One night we were playing hide and seek when we heard a branch snap a few yards from us. We assumed it was an elk or something since they were pretty common in our area. We would typically go to our tent if we saw one in hopes of not agitating it. So that's what we did. I called for my youngest brother who was still hiding, and he revealed himself to be hiding behind a branch pile not super far from where the noise originated. We went to the tent and I decided since it was already pretty late that we should just go to sleep. The next morning I went to check the spot for elk prints since I found them pretty fascinating. Instead, I found large cat prints. I knew they were cat prints because they had the 4 toe pads and the large center pad as well as no claw marks. I was honestly kind of excited. I had always wanted to see a mountain lion or a bobcat in the wild, but it never happened. Knowing that I was that close to either one was very thrilling. It then occurred to me that my youngest brother was hiding, separated from us scarily close to the paw prints location. It occurred to me that if that was a hungry mountain lion and it had taken notice of my 6-year-old brother hiding alone, it could have possibly taken a chance. We stopped doing hide and seek at night to avoid those types of situations, and we actually set up a roll call system to ensure everyone was together at night. Now I know a mountain lion likely wouldn't have done anything had it seen him, but still. The risk felt very real, and I worry that had I not heard it I could have lost my brother. Guide camp in Victorian bushland. Girl Guides are a paramilitary exercise in the British tradition. My troop was competing in a camp competition. We were the furthest from the mother house, down the hill and put of sight of every other campsite. One night we were all dead asleep in our tent. 8 preteen girls. We heard snuffling and loud grunting around the tent. Then the tent started to move and shake. This was a ex-army 8-person tent. Wooden beams and something was shaking the fucking tent. One beam started to some loose and 2 girls made a run to the mother house. The rest of us tried to keep out tent up. We then heard a louder thud and screaming, "Get up, get up, get up." By now we'd woken half the campsite. Turns out a family of wombats was upset we were on prime grazing area and was pushing the annoyance away. One of the girls had tripped over a wombat. So that's the time I thought I was going to die by a wombat. A few years ago I was camping in the Serengeti as a part of a safari I was doing. We had set up our tents in a designated camping area with a bathroom building. I'm from the States, and had been camping and backpacking tons of times. But the Serengeti felt different. We could hear baboons from our tents for one. In the middle of the night I had to pee. So I carefully unzipped my tent and started walking through the grass toward the bathrooms. Already I was feeling a little jumpy. When I creaked open the bathroom door, a crap ton of bats flew over my head out of the building. It felt like that scene in Batman Begins where young Bruce Wayne fell in the cave, haha. I was just really hoping that nothing else was in the bathroom, and it just felt really eerie. It ended up alright. But I was really glad to get back to my tent. On a separate trip, I was hiking through southern Ethiopia with a guide to a lake where we would be able to take a boat to see some hippos. It was quiet for the most part, but a portion of our hike took us through some brush and trees. And we started hearing this loud, gruesome moaning, and the whole forest felt still. We looked and looked to figure out what was making the sound. And we saw a massive baboon laying face down on the ground. Dying. We gathered from its position that it must have fallen from a tree and seriously injured itself. And was crying out in pain. Obviously we kept our distance because we didn't know how it would react. Or if any other animals would be nearby. The noise it made was both heartbreaking and terrifying. And it had almost spiritual quality to it. We moved on shortly after. But I'll forever remember how I felt watching this animal die alone in the forest. Honestly, one of the most surreal experiences of my life. I wasn't very deep in the woods. I was within a mile of my house. I was with the family dog and we went a bit off the trail. This man dressed in all camo. No pack. A huge knife on his belt. And his arm in a sling came out of the woods. Some of this is normal, but I got bad vibes. My dog immediately started freaking out, usually a very timid and kind dog. The man started explaining how he was hiking from one town to the next, which I thought was weird because he was injured and had no pack and wasn't on a trail. He started saying things like the dog must not like him because he had sunglasses on and that he was hurt. Could I show him the way? I just said I would be late for dinner if I did and tried to go around him to the trail and he blocked me. Just then I heard my mom yell for me. He did too, obviously, and looked scared. I yelled back towards the direction she yelled from, and when I turned around he had just disappeared back into the woods. Now, maybe it was nothing. But wouldn't a normal person say goodbye or wait and say hello to my mother? I don't know. It gave me very creepy vibes. I'm glad that I had good old Wally with me. I was backpacking in the Smoky Mountains with several guys. The guy at the front of us on the trail suddenly stopped. There was a rattlesnake in the middle of the path. It was a big old rattlesnake. Coiled up. Shaking its rattles and ready to kill something. After about 10 minutes. We realized this beast was not going to let us pass. Because it was a thin path on the side of a mountain. We all had to climb down the hill about 50 feet. Then walk through a stream to get past the rattlesnake. Then back up the hill to go around it. Was hiking solo in the White Mountains. Attempting to summit Mt. Adams via the airline trail. The presidentials were totally socked in with fog. Wind and some rain. Could not see more than a couple inches in front of me. I doubled back to the Madison Springs hut to review my options. And decided to climb to the top of Madison and go down the backside on the Watson path to make my way back to my original trailhead. The Watson path was tricky because A, it's all granite boulders at the top, which were B, very slippery due to the weather, and C, totally socked in from the fog, and D, no one else is on the trail that day. And I start thinking, man, if I break an ankle or take a header on these slick boulders, no one is going to find me for a long time, and I start to get the nerves. And I'm carefully picking my way through the fog. Barely able to make out the next cairn. When all of a sudden there is a brief break in the fog and I see this giant black thing down the trail in front of me. Inkily appearing and disappearing through the fog. And my mind immediately thinks bear. It's not more than 150 feet from me. And I'm peering through the fog. And I edge closer and yell at the thing. And I'm squinting and trying to make out what is. Ultimately a big upturned tree stump. Yes. I had the bejesus scared out of me by a dead tree. That thing really got my adrenaline going. It was probably the best lesson I've had with how stress and adrenaline can really change your perception of your environs. I was absolutely convinced that thing was a bear. As I got closer to it, it was so obviously not a bear. But for those 2 minutes, I was seriously activated. Epilogue, as I sat down, laughing and collecting myself, I encountered a small weasel living up in the rocks. Not happy that I had stopped near its den. A very aggressive weasel, as it turned out. This definitely falls into the strangest category. Was solo pitching for a long weekend in the Pacific Northwest. And one day was in the rare part of the trail that is closer to civilization. So there was a higher chance of other hikers/campers being around. I saw 1 or 2 people, but was mostly from afar. And as it was nightfall soon and getting cold and I was getting deeper into the woods, I knew the odds of seeing someone else was highly unlikely. I was hiking around a small pond and was going to set up camp nearby when I heard some shuffling noises behind a small boulder/rock wall type thing. It was a repetitive noise. And got louder and then quieter. But never stopped at all. And basically if you're a regular hiker you know a noise that does not fit the woods when you hear it. I took out my, 2, knives that I carry when hiking. And slowly walked around the boulder. Honestly not knowing what I would see. What I did not expect. And was very shocked to see. Was a very attractive couple in their 20s having very aggressive but happy doggy-style sex on a blanket. Obviously they were as shocked as I was to see one another. And they freaked out and yelled, as did I, and as they covered their bodies in their clothes in a panic I awkwardly apologized. Picked up all my gear and just sort of jogged off into the woods. Passing their tent they had pitched along the way. Same way I had seen the tent the dude had pitched in his nether regions. Also in another part of the country I thought I saw a bear once and it turned out to be a giant pile of mud. I wonder if that couple is still together. And if tell that story when they get drunk at parties. Like I do. Thanks for watching.